Welcome to the History and Heritage podcast with me, Liam Blake. Join me as we uncover hidden stories and insights that shaped our world. From mysteries to legacies, join us on this journey through time.
Right. Say the following slowly. Muckanaghederdauhaulia. That's Muicheanach. It tumbles out of the mouth, kind of like a dare almost, a tongue twister. The kind of name you might hear tossed out in a pub quiz to catch the bold or the foolhardy. And yet, it isn't just a curiosity. It's not just a record breaker in the Guinness Book of Records. This is a place, a very real place in West Galway, and it has a history as deep and as battered as the Atlantic itself. The scholar John O'Donovan once said, "Some names are more than mere words. They are vessels of memory." And that is the key here. Because Muckanaghederdauhaulia, or more correctly, Muicheanach Idir Dhá Sháile, carries not just syllables but centuries. Now, to set the scene. Connemara. Imagine the air itself heavy with sea salt, the wind of Camas Bay cutting like a blade, bogs stretching as far as you can see, dotted with rock, with curlew cries piercing the silence, and, tucked away there, between two sea inlets, is a peninsula shaped like the back of a pig. The Irish name gives it to you straight. Muicheanach Idir Dhá Sháile. The pig-marsh between two seas. No embellishment or no bardic spin, just people looking at their land and naming what they saw. And that is something worth dwelling on, because Irish place names are not decoration. They are maps. They tell you what the land is, and how it has been lived. A ford where the cattle swam, a ridge thick with elder trees, a marsh where pigs rooted. Each one a fragment of memory set in words, and here, in this tiny townland, you can see it distilled. Language binding people to place. So how then did this name, a small Gaeltacht town of Bog and Tide, become famous, whispered as the longest place name in Ireland, tossed about in crossword puzzles and novels? The answer is both comic and tragic. When English administrators, soldiers and surveyors set about mapping Ireland, they tried to catch the Irish language in their nets of spelling, and unfortunately the nets tore. The records show the chaos. Muckanaghederdauhaulia in 1593, Muckanaghederdauhaulia in 1596, Muicheanach in 1608. By the 19th century, Muicheanachederdauhaulia, which they kinda got. Each version a mangling of Irish rhythm into English letters. What we inherited, Muckanaghederdauhaulia, which I will have as the title of this episode, so look at that for the spelling, is not a word so much as a scar, a reminder of a conquest written into syllables. But here is the irony. The distortion gave it fame. It was the monstrous anglicised form that caught the eye of Georges Perec, the French novelist, when he set about writing Life a User's Manual in 1978. Perec, a master of constraints and puzzles, structured his novel like a chessboard, and he needed names of ports from around the world for his traveller to visit. One of them became Muckanaghederdauhaulia, chosen because it was, in his words, the longest. Paired with the shortest, the port of U in the Pacific, which is in the Caroline Islands and is now, as far as my research could go, known as Ulithi, I believe. Suddenly, this boggy townland in Galway was pinned onto the map of global literature, not because of its people, but because of its syllables. For Perec, it was an abstraction, a curiosity, but for Tim Robinson, the Englishman who gave his life to mapping and writing Connemara, the name was not a joke but a key. Robinson walked the roads, the boreens and the bogs. He found, at the bridge of Muckanaghederdauhaulia, what he called his own road to Damascus. For him, the long name was not just a curiosity. It was the door into the truth of the place, the tides, the turf, the hardship and the endurance. Where Perec played, Robinson listened. But to really understand, we must look back at the people. Because, for all of the literary fireworks, the townland's real story is of survival. The Down survey of the 17th century lists Nicholas Burke, a Catholic, as the owner in the area. After Cromwell, the land was stripped away and absorbed into the vast estates of the Martin family of Ballynahinch, one of the tribes of Galway. Richard Martin, known as Humanity Dick, became famous for his duels and his campaign against cruelty to animals. He even helped found what would become the RSPCA. And yet, the tenants in Muicheanach struggled to keep hunger from their doors. The contradiction is stark. By the mid-19th century, the Ordnance Survey was cataloguing this as a townsland of 470 acres, of which barely 100 could be tilled or pastured. The rest was bogland. In 1841, the census recorded 103 people living here on these boglands in 22 houses. Small, cramped and smoke-filled cottages mostly. By 1851, after the famine, that number, unsurprisingly, had dropped to 81. A third gone, some to death, but many more to the emigrant ships. But against the odds, the community endured. By 1911, the population had climbed again to 111. Irish names filled the forms: MacDonagh, Keneally, O'Malley, and nearly all were Irish speakers. In household after household, the census men recorded, "Cannot read, cannot write, speaks Irish only." Think about that. At a time when English was encroaching everywhere, when schools and officials pushed relentlessly for so-called progress, this small community held fast to its own tongue. Their world was in Irish, their prayers, their songs, and their place names. To outsiders, perhaps, they looked poor, but their wealth was in language, in continuity, and in belonging. And yet, this same community bore the scars of poverty and neglect. Relief works, such as the Congested Districts Board, arrived in the late 19th century. They built piers and roads, sometimes half-finished. At Snov Bow, just north of here, two sisters were contracted to build a causeway, hauling stone by hand. But the project collapsed in bureaucratic absurdity when one was judged not meeting her quota. The road ends still on the shore, a line of stone leading absolutely nowhere. John Millington Synge, travelling through Connemara, saw men on such works and wrote of their hang-dog dejection. The landscape itself is littered with half-complete promises. The bridge at Muckanaghederdauhaulia, I thought we were finished with the name, was first built in 1900, a wooden crossing over the channel. By 1980 it had collapsed into the sea. It was replaced by a concrete arch, functional and unadorned but sufficient. Nearby lies Quay Muicheanach, the pier jutting out into Camas Bay. Roger Derham described it as a snub-nosed vanishing point, waiting endlessly for ships, a symbol of hope or of futility depending on your mood or mindset. Then came this, the 21st century. In 2005, under the Official Languages Act, the government declared the sole legal name to be the Irish Muicheanach-Idir-Dhá Sháile. Just like that, the anglicised name was wiped from officialdom. No longer the longest place name in Ireland in English. No longer the curiosity. Instead, the dignity of the Irish language restored. For some, it was a loss. The quirky fame was gone. But for others, it was a vindication. The land called again by its true name. And what of today? The census no longer lists hundreds. Many houses stand empty, or are remade as holiday homes. Irish is still taught, but English presses hard. Down the bog road is Madra, the dog rescue centre, better known to some than the parish itself. And yet, tourists still come, lured by the promise of the impossible name. They take photographs by the sign, they laugh, they stumble through the syllables, and sometimes, if they linger, they glimpse something deeper, a townland that has endured famine, neglect and emigration, a place where language itself is the anchor. So what exactly are we left with? Not a curiosity, not a joke, but a place that forces us to think about how names carry history. Muicheanach Idir Dhá Sháile is a microcosm. It tells us about the colonisation and about the mangling of Irish into English, which you can see multiple places across the island of Ireland. It tells us about famine, about families who clung to the bog with stubborn pride. It tells us about how outsiders, Perec and Robinson for two examples, and even bureaucrats in Dublin, reframed its meaning. And it tells us that names are not just labels, they are acts or memorials of survival. To stand on that bridge today, with the wind pulling at your coat, is to hear the name spoken not just as a challenge but as an inheritance. Muicheanach Idir Dhá Sháile, the pig-marsh between two seas. It is a riddle, yes, but it is also an answer to how people endure, how memory lingers, and how language itself binds us to the land.